And then this work of 1960, everyone's favorite, Painting with Two Balls. And obviously, if you giggled or laughed at that title and its correspondence to this image, you got the joke, a joke that revolves not only around the fact that there are these two ready-made tiny wooden balls that are placed in the painting between two of the three canvases, right, that are brought together to create this work, but obviously also as a kind of sardonic comment, gesture, pun on the masculinity of painting in the abstract expressionist moment, some belittling comment on those heroic masculine painters like Jackson Pollock, right? The idea being back then in the late 40s, early 50s, painting really had balls, you know, and now, well, you wanted to have, well, I'll give you a couple. So he's really playing there in this punning way between object and language, the object quality of language, the linguistic dimension of objects, right? Back and forth. Okay, then back to that chapter 1962D. This, by the way, is one of the new chapters added to the second edition. Most of the new chapters are added towards the end of the book to bring the book up to the present. But this is one chapter from earlier on that's added earlier on in the text, and it's an interesting one, and it's an important one, and it's one that I want to call your attention to and make a few comments based upon it. What it's trying to do here is it's trying to think about, in a way, the influence and legacy of Jasper Johns in particular on a number of other artists in the 60s who either may or may not be commonly associated with Jasper Johns. And how striking it is that sometimes work that seems so far from painting, certainly, can still be talked about within the same discussion of Johns' work. So we might start here with this work by Richard Serra from 1969, right? So now we're just jumping ahead historically to the late 60s. This is a work entitled Splashing. And it was executed in '69 at the New York Gallery Dealers warehouse, Leo Castelli's warehouse in New York. Here's a photo of Serra at the warehouse with some of his other works around him, and he's throwing lead there. Okay. So what do we have here? We have an artist using molten lead, melted lead, certainly as a metal when melted, formless, right? It's not holding its form in the same way as things typically don't when they're melted. And then taking that melted material, that melted lead, that metal that could very well be have been used as part of modern sculpture, thinking back to our discussion a few weeks ago. And then through a very expressive, right, expressionist gesture, throwing it at that place where the floor and the wall meet, that seam, right? So that's how this work was produced. He was taking the molten lead and flinging it and throwing it at that spot where the wall and the floor meet. So a very performative action of flinging this material, having it stick, eventually cool, right, and remain there. Does that remind you of someone else? Another artist? Jackson Pollock, right? Right. This is not painting the way Pollock was painting, throwing ordinary house paint on unstretched canvas laid on the floor of his studio. And it's also not sculpture in any conventional sense of the term. It is the indexical trace and residue of a performative action, right? Of using a sculptural material in a formless form using the very space of production as space of exhibition, which, by the way, we might as well note is not the artist's studio, but the art dealer's warehouse, right? A very industrial space in Manhattan where such experiments could take place, right? And where such experimental art could be exhibited. And so what the textbook is doing here in this chapter is calling our attention to how artists are thinking about matter, the materiality of their practice, including gravity and gravitational pull, right? And the weight of things, and the relationship between all of that and abstraction and indexicality. So there's the gravity, the physical force of throwing and having something fall, right? And then there are so gravity as physical force. Then we have the fluctuating physical properties of heating and cooling, right? The lead. And then there's that artist who is also using melted material. Who is that? Right, Jasper Johns. What was he melting? Wax, right? So you see, it's this business about exploring the physical properties and physical forces and the relationship between those physical properties and forces, the environment in which you're working, your body as artist, right? We can really take this photograph as yet another chapter in the ongoing radical evolution and transformation of the image of the artist at work, right? This is far from those 18th and 19th century paintings of artists at their easel, right? I mean, look at this guy. He's in his work clothes, his work boots, he's got a mask on, one of those, right? Because he's working with such potentially toxic materials, right? I mean, this looks like some sort of industrial wasteland. And there he is, flinging his molten lead. You also see in the background some of his steel prop works, right?